Buenos días y bienvenidos a...
Good morning and welcome everyone. We will give the floor to the presentation of the European Observatory of Research and Innovation on Cybersecurity and Privacy. So Javier Tobal from this observatory. Thank you, José Antonio.
As José Antonio said, I'm Javier Tobal from the Ciberseguridad, that is a Spanish cybersecurity cluster. And as a representative of the cluster, I work in the European Observatory of Cybersecurity and Privacy. Okay. We have in this panel Raúl Pérez, the latest one from Panda Security, Pablo Montoliu from our own insurance company, Senatore from ICT Legal Consulting, and Mark Miller, that is the CEO of CONCEPTIVITY, and also is one of the partners in our project, in the Cyberwatching project, in the European Observatory. And he will, we will take the lead of this panel. Mark, please.
Should I stand here or should
No.
I? Okay, perfect. Excellent. First of all, to be honest, I don't want to sit here and be the one spending 20 minutes speaking about cyber watching. However,
you can see that.
Okay, perfect. So maybe we go to the next slide. Cyber watching is actually a Horizon 2020 funded project by the European Commission with 4 different components. The first component is essentially an observatory of the different research and innovation initiatives associated with the European Union and associated countries. So actually what we're looking at is we're looking at all the different projects that have been done, all the different approaches that have been addressed, and at the same time trying to actually catalog what's been happening. The project is quite unique in that we also are putting together a catalog of all of the research and innovation services. At the same time, the key elements of the project is actually the marketplace. It gives the opportunity for SMEs especially, but also medium-sized, larger companies as well, to be able to put their products, services, solutions into an environment where the users can actually access the information about these services, the information about these solutions. Furthermore, this type of marketplace is intended to have a trust component to it. So there has to be a situation where these types of products and services are trusted. So what does that mean? Does that mean certification? Perhaps. Does that mean looking at what are all the elements that are required? Yes, definitely. And at the same time, it does mean that this marketplace could be a trusted place for these solutions. So when a user wants to have a certain solution, or he doesn't even know that a solution exists, this marketplace can be the place to do that. And finally, one of the components is the end user club. Maybe I should also mention a few things about why this panel is very, very interesting. I think that we have here a number of components. We have, first of all, the legal component, and Laura will talk about certain aspects of the legal components. We have, interestingly enough, also the insurance component, and Pablo will talk about insurance. And then also, to round out everything, we actually have a solutions provider, and the solutions provider is Panda Security, and Raúl will talk about the solutions. So in a lot of respects, we're actually trying to represent what is happening with the project, but at the same time, we're also looking at the broader aspects in relation to cybersecurity. So the next slide, please. The cyber watching project is also wanting to get your involvement. So if you're involved in an organization which potentially has a solution or even has a product, it would be very interesting for us to have your product, your service, your solution, your capabilities of your organization into our marketplace and into our website. So, and also, if you have other projects, for example, other European Commission funded projects or other projects which are funded even by the national administrations, it would be very interesting for you to actually register on our website. So the website is actually Cyberwatching.eu, and you can follow us on Twitter as well. And there's also a website email address there. And throughout the discussion, the intention is to actually get your questions and answer your questions in addition to what we're presenting. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the discussion to Laura, who will talk about certain legal aspects.
Good morning to all of you. I'm Laura Senatore, an Italian lawyer with expertise in European data protection law, information, communication, and technology law. I've been working some years ago with the Italian Data Protection Authority, il garante per la protezione dei dati personali, and after this, at the moment, I'm associate at the ICT Legal Consulting, an international law firm specialized in intellectual property law, European data protection law, information and communication, and technology law. We have offices in Milan, Bologna, Rome, and Amsterdam, and we are partners in Cyberwatching, as Mark was saying. Actually, ICT Legal Consulting in Cyberwatching will play a supporting role in the policy, regulatory, and legal discussion that contribute to the shaping up of the global cybersecurity landscape, which is actually our role in the project. Today, I was thinking of talking about SME cybersecurity challenges and compliance with GDPR. As many of you may know, from the 25th of May 2017, it will be immediately applicable in all European member states, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is an important European legislation which aims, on the one hand, to guarantee a better protection for the individual's personal data, but on the other hand, it raises considerable concern for enterprises established in Europe whose activities involve processing of personal data. Actually, the GDPR contains important sanctions for violations of its provisions, which can go up to 20 million and up to the 4% of the total worldwide annual turnover of the preceding financial year. So that's why it is a concern for enterprises. And of course, it will affect big companies as well as SMEs, which have less financial force to face the incoming legislation. So, first of all, we should clarify what can be considered processing of personal data. And Section 4 of the GDPR clarifies it, saying that processing of personal data is any operation or set of operations which is performed on personal data or sets of personal data, whether or not by automated means. So, almost everything, let's say. So collection, recording, organization, structuring, storage, and so on. So whichever processing of personal data is carried out by an enterprise established in Europe, it will have to comply with the provisions contained in GDPR, no matter the dimensions and no matter actually the dimensions of the company. So the real challenge of this legislation is that GDPR does not contain a prospective rules for the data controllers to implement security measures, because actually the previous national data protection laws enlisted a certain number of security measures to implement to be compliant with the data protection legislation. Now with GDPR it is different, because the data controller are called to implement actually a risk-based approach. And let's say that Section 24 of GDPR is the most important provisions for the data controller because it sets the so-called principle of accountability, which means that this provision does not list the technical and organizational measures required to comply with the legislation, but provides that actually the data controller shall implement appropriate technical and organizational measure to ensure, and that's the first point, and to be able to demonstrate that processing is performed in accordance with the regulation. And the controller should do this taking into account some aspects. So the nature, the scope, the context and purposes of processing, as well as the risk of varying likelihood and severity for the rights and freedom of the natural person. So the controller are asked to have a risk-based approach, which is something complicated, which can be something very complicated in terms of privacy. So I leave the word to our colleague.
Should I go on?
Yes, please, Pablo.
I am not Italian and I am not a lawyer. I am Spanish and I have an IT background, but specialized on the insurance side. As most of you know, cyber insurance is one of the hot topics, not only in Spain, but also across Europe or continental Europe. We have a significant trend which is getting into this unknown world of the cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is the very last line of defense. When everything else failed, then it comes insurance into place. But in the security world, as you know, we don't need everything else to fail. Just one single thing that fails is enough to activate the insurance. Because you probably all know the concept of the security chain, where a single point of failure will break the chains. So that's one of the complexities of this fantastic world we are in. One of the questions I typically receive is, well, this cyber insurance is only for the very large corporations or the big companies. Well, no. I mean, it's important for big corporations to have in place a cyber insurance because basically it protects the balance sheet. But when it comes to the SMEs, or the smaller companies, or even the individual companies, the one-person companies, it's even more important. There are some studies in place that say that 50 plus, I think it was like 51% of the SMEs that get a cyber attack, within the following 6 months, they shut down because they don't have the capabilities, the technical capabilities, the financial capabilities to respond to the cyber breach. That's why it becomes really important to have this cyber insurance that will help them address the complexities of responding to a cyber breach. What does cyber insurance cover? Basically, we are talking about 3 main aspects or 3 main groups of coverages. First one, the specific incident expenses. We are talking when we get a security incident, we have to bring in some specific IT specialists, the forensics, some lawyers, some experts in crisis communication. That's an overcost that the insurance will take care of. There are also expenses about data recovery. Sometimes it's hard to to get into place the systems and the data up and running. So the insurance will help you and will cover the over expense. The notification, it becomes relevant now with the GDPR, which we will come back to. So sometimes if you have a big number of clients or whatever, so notification can be an expensive exercise. So that's the first group, the first group of coverage, the incident response. The second part is the third-party liabilities. When we have a security breach, it's quite likely that we will have third-party clients, providers, partners, putting some legal claims against us, so the insurance will help us to address that third-party claim. But not only that, but also regulatory fines. And here is when it comes relevant, the GDPR, because as Laura just mentioned, the fines that the GDPR is going to impose are quite relevant. So the insurance, depending on the jurisdiction, but here in Spain it does, and across continental Europe in most of the places as well, the insurance will cover or will take care of that sanction. It doesn't happen like that in the Anglo-Saxon world, in the US or in the UK, because according to their standards, they cannot accept an insurance to cover a sanction, because it can mean that no proper due diligence is applied into the controls. But so far, in continental Europe or in Spain, we have the insurance covering the potential fines. Not only from the, by the way, not only from the data protection regulator, but from any other regulator that can issue any type of fine. And then there is the third group of coverage, which is the loss of income. Of course, when we have a cyber breach or a cyber attack, we stop our business for minutes, hours, days, weeks, whatever. So that loss of income from not having been operational in our business is also covered by the insurance. And those are basically the three most common and typical insurance coverages. There are some more, like some optional, because again, the cyber insurance is not a black or white tool that you can, yes or no, put into place, but this is more a tailor-made coverage that the different insurers will be flexible on applying additional coverages. So sometimes the actual physical property damage can be covered. The social engineering, which typically is not covered by cyber insurance, but by crime insurance or fraud insurance, depending on the country. And basically, this is the main topic. One relevant point, which also links to the GDPR, is the thing about the 72 hours notification of the breaches, which this is going to be a game changer for the insurance, the cyber insurance world in Europe. Because as it happened in the US 11 years ago, when the state of California initially and then the other states put into place this mandatory reporting of cyber breaches within the following 72 hours to the breach being known, that made people really aware of the importance of the cyber breaches, no? and really provided a sense to apply insurance coverages. This is somehow going to happen now in Europe, as we expect from the studies that we are performing.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Now on to our solutions provider.
Yeah, as Pablo said, when everybody fails, the insurance entrance. Okay, we are part of this chain as a manufacturer. We are trying that all our customer being safe. Okay, and from Panda Security, we have been in the market 27 years. We are one of the oldest cybersecurity companies in Europe. We are a Spanish company, and we know very well. Only to show you who is the actual cybersecurity world, in the 90s, I think in 90 or 91, we found 2 virus in this year. Now we are finding 500,000 samples every day, and the complexity is enormous. It's a very big concern for the customer because they're spending millions in cybersecurity products and they are still infected. This is a huge problem for the market. This is, as you say, the cybersecurity is growing very fast. It's growing very fast. And the thing is that we, probably the manufacturer, we are not evolving as fast as the market or the bad guys are doing. And this is a huge problem in the market, okay? In our point, the thing is, from Panda, we are protecting big companies, medium companies, and small companies, okay? It's very important for us that protect all the customers in the market, because sometimes the smaller companies, they are not protected at all, because the cybersecurity solutions sometimes are very expensive and they are totally uncovered. And we are trying to, with our new solution, make a democratic, very functional solutions. As Pablo says too, regarding to GDPR, one important data is that you have to notice, say I'm infected, or I have a security problem, and you have to, but the reality is not there. Okay, the big problem is the bad guys enter in the companies in less than 24 hours, and the companies, due to this lack of visibility, normally then they take between 3 and 8 months to know this breach, okay? And this is very dangerous. This is like what happened with Equifax. With Equifax, they had been stealing data during months, and nobody knows nothing. And then 4 months later, they say, what happened? We lost millions and millions of personal data of my, and this is why the companies are working to give visibility to the customers, and then we have to go deeper. Okay, it's not enough an antivirus, it's not enough a firewall, it's not enough a newest generation firewall. Okay, it's not enough. And we have been working in the last 10 years in a new solution that is called Data Defense, that we sold to the market 3 years ago, and now we have more than 15,000 customers. And the reality is that we don't have malware. That is good. And we provide a very good solution to our customers, and they are very happy. But we have to continue democratizing the cybersecurity and providing the best security solution to the market. And this is our agenda for the next year. And this is what we are working as Panda Security, one of the biggest European endpoint protection companies. Okay.
Excellent. Great. Now, we do have some questions planned to discuss among ourselves. However, rather than going into that, perhaps we have still quite a bit of time. And are there questions that are coming from the audience? I think that I would rather give the opportunity to everyone here to ask questions about cyberwatching, about the legal aspects, about the insurance aspects, about the Panda security solutions. So please, are there any questions? Is there a microphone? Great.
Hello. It works? Okay. Well, I have 2 questions, one for Laura and then for Pablo. First, well, I'm a lawyer. I do have knowledge about the problem of the new regulations about the GRPD. I know in Spanish it's no. So we have now 3 fields of problems here in Europe about the protections of data of our customers, of our people. Okay, my questions is about the formal regulations allows you a tacit consent of people when they insert the data in our websites, in wherever, in emails, in MailChimp, whatever. And now there are new regulation orders an explicit consent. Okay. So the problem is that, okay, we have a very blur regulations because we know we have recommendations, directive, regulations, and we have an above regulation in Europe, in the Parliament, but not all the countries here in Europe are going to proceed properly. But we have a danger, as Pablo said, the fines. Who fines? How we do protect our customers, our clients, and we have to difference first the big companies, and then the small companies, the particulars, the lawyers, the engineers, people who work for their own. So that's the question, how we are going to react to this huge change. And then for Pablo, about insurance. Okay, we have a very big problems with companies. We have a big problems because the risk in cybersecurity are, again, blur. And you point the problem of third-party companies about when we change, when all the risks don't depend on us, depend on a third party. So you point that the overcost, I like the word because one of the big problems when we hire an insurance is the overcost and the risk we do not prevent. So how do you do it? How are you going to face this problem and to give a proper price to your customers? Okay, and all the companies, I have this question also. Do you resecure all the companies in the world, like Allianz, whatever, Aon, whatever, or all you are going to cover all this risk, or I don't know, or it's going to be specific companies?
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a very important one because that's the main concern of our clients, because we provide legal advice to companies exactly as you do. So the point is that, as I was saying, the importance is to be able to demonstrate the compliance. So your question is, how can my client demonstrate its compliance? The answer is procedure, with a lot of procedures. Privacy shall become very important for the company. So as a lawyer, you should make sensibilization to the people working in the company, the single people inside it, which means, as a method, a privacy legal expert shall talk with the single department of the company to make sure to understand, first of all, make an assessment, a privacy assessment. So because people are not privacy experts, so they do not know that to send an email with a commercial purpose or to start profilation, they need to start profiling people, they need an explicit and clear consent. So they do not know when consent shall be used or not. So my answer is that a legal expert should cooperate with the single people in the department. First of all, in a principle of data protection by design and by default, which means, with an example, it means that if your company, your client, decides to start a new project which involves the processing of personal data, you have to be involved from the very beginning in the project, which means that privacy by design, since the very beginning, you have to cooperate, the legal expert has to cooperate with the company, with the person in charge of organizing the page with the consent, the text of the consent. So you have to cooperate since the very beginning and make sure that there is a data protection by default, which means that in implementing this new project the company has decided to implement, you have to take into consideration that principles of data protection should be implemented by default. So it is complicated. It is very complicated. And on the other hand, the thing is that you have to do a mapping activities of what kind of processing of personal data is concretely carried out, because they do not know. So you have to talk with them, interview the people of the several departments. Imagine the sales department, the marketing, and all of them, all the ones, the human resources, very important, all of them. So you start mapping activities, and you, as a legal, have two important roles. On the one hand, sensibilization. So you have to scare them for their good, and on the other, because they have to call you when they decide to do things. Because if you are not involved, you cannot be helpful. So you have to make sure that they involve you in everything they do since the very beginning. Because otherwise, I make an example. If you insert in a CRM, I don't know, CRM, personal data which are not properly collected, you make an enormous mistake, because then you won't be, this CRM will lose its value, because the personal data contained there cannot be used. So you need to be sure that the things you can use in there have proper consent. So I would say my tips are: make sure that there is an explicit consent linked to the purpose for which you are asking the consent, which means that profiling and marketing should be separated, because that's what European GDPR tells us, and European data protection authorities are confirming it. They should be separated. So you should inform always data subjects if there are any transfers of data outside Europe. You should say who is the data controllers and so on. So you have many obligations. But I would say that the key for this, for helping the compliance, is to proceduralize. I don't know if it's a word that exists. And then, of course, there are two important instruments that the GDPR gives us to demonstrating the compliance, which are enlisted at section 40 and 42 of the GDPR, which are codes of conduct and mechanism of certification, which means that companies, also SMEs, will be able to adhere to code of conduct decided by associations of controller. So the associations of controllers or processors decide a code of conduct which shall be approved by the Data Protection Authority. And if your client adheres to this code of conduct, of course, it demonstrates the compliance. And so it does with the mechanism of certification. I hope I've answered your question.
Thanks, Laura.
Regarding the other question, third-party risk is always a major topic on every insurance, and specifically on the cyber insurance, of course. In an ideal world, everyone would have an insurance, so there wouldn't be any problem with third-party dependencies, like happens with your car, for example. You expect, or theoretically, everyone has an insurance, so there's no problem. Okay, in the cyber world, this is not like that, particularly in Europe. As you may know, 82% of the cyber insurances in the world, as of today, as of last year, sorry, were in the US, 82 in the US. Europe is growing faster, so at some point we will have the same maturity. But for example, just to give you an idea, this study we published last week, that it was performed by Aon with the Ponemon Institute, Institute Ponemon, stated that in Europe, only 13 13% of the IT assets have proper insurance. So we are way far behind our US colleagues, but this is also interesting because it means that we have a lot of room for improvement. but going back to the third-party risk, provided that not everyone else will have a proper cyber insurance coverage, we have to be very practical covering our third-party risk in both directions. The third parties that provide business to me and the third parties that I provide business to. The cyber insurance can cover both. There are actually some specific ad hoc coverage for cloud processing. There's a specific insurance small letter for cloud. So if you have cloud providers, cloud processing, or you provide cloud services to third parties, there are specific coverages on the insurance for that. So everything comes, as I mentioned again, this is normally a tailor-made exercise that requires some thinking and some analysis before going to contracting the actual insurance. So that's
okay, one question, one thing I want to add regarding to the last Verizon inform, they say that 5% of the computers in the world, they are infected and they don't know it. This is a huge problem. Why? Because from these computers, they have been stealing information during a lot of time, and the biggest problem is they don't know. And you cannot go say, I have been stolen. Or, moreover, the thing is, for example, a very simple example, if you are in a call center, for example, a consultant company, some of the people that work there, they go with a USB key, and they put it, and they copy the database of customers, and they go, and nobody know nothing. This is a huge concern, because the company has been stealing everyday data, and they don't know. Okay, this is the main concern, because it takes a lot of time until the company knows that they have been stolen. And this is the point that we, for example, we provide GDPR products that they are compliant, and we give all the visibility that the customer are doing in their computers. Okay, to be transparent, they say, hey, this guy is copying names or security or personal data like DNAs or credit card numbers or whatever, and they are copying this information to another place or sending to Dropbox, to the cloud or whatever, and this is the main task from the manufacturers. We have to provide you all the visibility to see what is happening in your companies. Because if you don't see that you have been stolen, you will never go to the lawyer or you can go to the insurance because you don't know what is happening. Sure. We are trying to give you the visibility to go to the lawyer or the insurance and say, hey, this guy has been stealing me data during the last months and I have the proof, okay? I have all this information, okay?
So, any last questions before we go through our sound bites and summary of what our discussion has been? So, based upon that, we'll actually go to a very quick summary, which is to say each of the panelists have essentially 30 seconds to say what is the key takeaway point that the audience should have from this panel. And then after everyone else has gone through their soundbite, I'll do a quick soundbite on cyber watching and summarize the whole panel. So to you, Laura, what is the key point, what is the key takeaway that everyone should have from today?
I would say that SMEs in particular always taking into consideration this very important principle of risk-based approach in data processing. So have a risk-based approach, and always remind that it is important to ensure that the processing is performed in compliance with GDPR, but most of all, it is important to be able to demonstrate it. So, procedure.
Excellent. Thank you. Pablo.
Well, my executive summary, I think, is quite clear, no? Consider insuring your cyber risk basically because of two reasons. First one is to be able to continue operating and perhaps existing once you have a cyber attack. Yeah. And the second one is because it's a good value for money. I mean, it's compared to other insurances that you have, typically related to property, where the likelihood and the impact of an event is quite lower to the likelihood and to the impact of a cyber attack, it makes complete sense. So it's good value for money, and I think it's reasonable.
Excellent.
Okay, well, from my point of view, I think the main point is before you buy any cybersecurity solution, please get very well informed, okay? That fits in your company, that cover your requirements, that all the functionalities will fit in your company, okay? Please get informed before you buy any product, test it, do a proof of concept, install this product in your company. This is the only way to know that all the money that you are spending in cybersecurity is valuable, okay? And don't forget buy Panda products, okay?
Excellent, excellent.
Mark,
So,
1 minute.
basically, what I have to say is, and just to repeat, Cyberwatching gives the opportunity for SMEs and also for larger companies to actually expose their products, their services to the marketplace. Between the marketplace that we have as part of the project, but also the SME club, it also allows even users who are SMEs, for example, to look for services such as what ICT is doing in terms of the GDPR, to look at solutions such as what Panda Security is doing, and to also look at, for example, insurance products such as Aon is doing. So not only is it a marketplace to sell your solution, but it's also a marketplace to be able to see what solutions are available out there. So I would encourage everyone to go to the website, to go to Cyberwatching.eu and register, because there is a lot of information there. There will also be regular project updates. So as we have deliverables for the project, as we have workshops for the project, as we have even consultation meetings where there'll be opportunities to network and exchange information, it's also the potential for you to attend those and to be part of the project from the standpoint of exposing your organization to the rest of the world in terms of what you can offer, but also what can be offered to you. So summing it all up, I think that we have a situation where cybersecurity has a lot of challenges. We've presented you with some of the solutions, from the legal aspects to the insurance aspects to the actual cybersecurity solutions. And I think that in the grand scheme of things, the Cyberwatching project could offer an opportunity to do some aspects of not just addressing your business needs, but also addressing the needs of communication and interaction with others. So thank you very, very much for your attention. And I will put one last comment in there. If your organization is also interested, the European Cybersecurity Organization is also an organization in Europe that has a lot of members which address cybersecurity issues. So in addition to Cyberwatching, I would ask that you also consider looking at EXO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Gracias, Pablo. Gracias, Raúl. Gracias, Mille, Laura. Okay, we are seeing that cybersecurity is becoming more and more interesting these days. And cybersecurity people, cybersecurity vendors are now facing a huge challenge to keep update with our ever-increasing speed that is increasing every day, innovation and technology. Technology is changing, risk is changing, incidents are becoming more and more complicated, and even these changes affect to small and medium companies that has to establish a very strong links with the research groups, with the research people, the research company, and finally the research community that can help these companies to remain competitive in the market. So that is our message, that everything in cybersecurity will become a success as far as you innovate and you join together strengths with the partners you can find in Europe. Thanks. Gracias por vuestra atención y terminamos aquí.
Gracias.